Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone joining us from around the world, and welcome. Thank you for joining us today. It's wonderful to see students, scholars, faculty, business administrators, HR partners, and members of the Penn community with us from Philadelphia and many countries around the world. For some of you who don't know me, my name is Dr. Rudy Altimirano. I'm the Executive Director of International Student and Scholar Services and Executive Director of Immigration Services and Integration Programs at Penn Global. Joining me is Dr. Lily Jiang, who is our Director of Immigration Advising, Compliance, IT, and Operations. So on behalf of the entire ISS team and Penn Global team who are with us today, thank you for being here. So we know the new duration of status final rule has really generated many questions. Many of you are asking, what change? Will this affect me? Do I need to do anything new? What does this mean for my studies, my research, employment, my travel? So those are exactly the questions we'll answer today. And many of you also submitted questions when you registered. We have incorporated the most common ones in today's presentation. We will do a lightning round today, and we encourage you also to continue using the Zoom chat. Our ISS team will be responding throughout the webinar, and we'll conclude with, of course, a live Q&A with Dr. Zhang. So before we begin, I would like to leave you with one important message. Right now, there is no immediate action required because a lot of you are emailing us, should I do anything? Should I travel? Should I apply now for extension of status? So right now, there is no immediate action required. Although the final rule has been published, current immigration regulations remain in effect until September 15, 2026. So basically, our goal today is to help you understand what is changing, what is not changing, and how Penn will support you throughout this transition. So next slide, please, Mike. So I want to talk about what to expect today. Before we go to details, I want to set expectations. Today's presentation provides a very high-level overview of the final rule based on what we know today at 2:02. Although the final rule has been published, implementation is still evolving. Over the coming weeks, we expect additional guidance from our government, from Homeland Security, from USCIS, from SBP, and CBP on important implementation issues like extension of stay, procedures, travel, CVS updates, operational processes. And that means there are still some questions that the federal government has not yet answered. So ISS is actively monitoring these developments. We're working closely with Penn leadership, our national organizations, our outside immigration council, our peer institutions. So as new guidance becomes available, ISS will continue updating our website, our FAQs, and continue to provide webinars and communications. So today's webinar is the beginning of the conversation, not the end of it. So we will keep you informed every step of the way. Next slide, please, Mike. Next slide. So before we continue, let me talk about what we hope that you will take away from today's webinar. So by the end of today's session, you will understand what the final rule changes, how it affects students, scholars, and Penn, how ISS is preparing for implementation, and what you should do moving forward. Our goal is not simply to explain a federal regulation. Our goal is to provide you with practical guidance, answer your questions, and help you feel informed and prepared. Next slide, please, Mike. So if you remember only 4 things from today's webinar, please remember this. First, the final rule elimination duration of status, or we call DS, is very important to remember. But instead of being admitted under DS, F1 and J1 students and scholars will generally receive a fixed period of admission. Second, that admission period will generally be based on the length of your academic program or exchange activity. as reflected on your Form I-20 or DS-2019, up to a maximum of, listen to this, 4 years at a time. Third, your I-94 will become much, much more important. It will generally show your what we call admit until date. It's the date you're authorized to remain in the United States. And if you need additional time, you may need to apply to USCIS for an extension of stay or EOS. And finally, the rule is currently scheduled to take effect September 15, 2026. However, implementation is still evolving. We expect additional guidance from federal agents for our federal government before then. And so the effective date can change if there are legal developments or further federal action. Okay, next slide, please, Mike. The next slide is about, we have to be on the same page about glossary of terms. So I would like to introduce, I will not go through all of this, a few terms you'll hear throughout today's presentation from Lily and I. Don't worry about memorizing them. We'll explain each one as we go. But let's start with the basic, the current system. D/S, or duration of status, is how most F1 students and J1 exchange visitors are admitted today. And instead of an expiration date, your I-94 simply says D/S, meaning you may generally remain in the United States as long as you maintain your immigration status. However, under the final rule, you'll hear a new term. It is called AUD. Start learning this now. Admit until date. So instead of DS, your I-94 will generally show a specific admit until date, the date until which you're authorized to remain in the United States. And if you need more time beyond that, another important term, EOS, or extension of stay. It's an application that will allow eligible students or scholars to remain in the U.S. longer to complete their academic program or research. So you will hear also, maybe Lila and I will talk about CBP, and CBP is the Custom Border Protection, which admits you into the United States, that's in the airport, and issues your I-94, and then USCIS, which reviews extension of stay applications. So keep these terms in your mind, and as we move through today's presentation, you'll see how they all fit together on this new framework. Okay, with this one, the next slide is, we've now covered the big picture, okay? So the next question is, what exactly is changing? And to answer that, I would like to invite Dr. Lily Zhang to compare the current duration of status system with the new framework under the final rule and explain what these changes mean in practice. So Lily, go for it.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Rudy. So as Rudy already set the stage, this is a very comprehensive immigration rule changes. Now, in front of you, it's a simplified framework to make you understand the bigger change. The current system, they have duration of status, which means every time that you in and out of US, the I-94 is marked with a DS, but not a specific date. In the new system, after September 15th, you're going to receive I-94 include a very specific admit until date. And that date itself going to drive a lot of important benefits that you're going to have, which we will dive into that in the later slides. What you need to understand is currently, if you have any program change,
7305.
if you're going to have any program change, then you will get contacted through ISSS, and we will be able to help you to extend the program without government involvement. But in the new system, ISSS can only do the recommendation, and the final approval going to come from USCIS. Therefore, as you can see, there are more steps involved to maintain your status, and we really need you to stay on top of things, which we're going to iterate in a lot more details in the following slides. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Dr. Lily. So let me do this quickly, and I'll come back to you, Dr. Zhang. So who is affected? Who does this rule apply to? So the final rule applies to four primary groups when we're talking about the University of Pennsylvania. So this will be quick. F1 students, including undergraduate, graduate, and professional students. F2 dependents, such as spouses and children of F1 students. J1 exchange visitors, this includes students, visiting scholars, postdoctoral researchers, of course, physicians, professors, and other exchange participants. And lastly, the J2 dependents who accompany J1 exchange visitors. So if you fall into one of these categories, the final rule may affect how your period of admission is determined and how you maintain your immigration status in the future. So it's important to remember that the impact won't be exactly the same for everyone. A first-year undergraduate student, for example, a PhD candidate, and a postdoctoral researcher may all have different considerations under the new framework. So remember this as a takeaway. If you are in one of these F or J categories, or you're a dependent or someone who is, the final rule is relevant to you. And throughout the rest of today's presentation, we will explain what these changes may mean for each group and what steps, if any, you may need to take. So, Lily, let's talk about the four biggest changes introduced by the final rule.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll
Now,
start with
Rudy,
the
I'm
first.
going to
Yeah,
also plug
yeah,
in addition to F1 and J1
yeah.
and their dependents, also it's going to largely impact Penn departments as well.
Yes,
If they
correct.
admit international students, if
Mhm,
their department hosts J1 exchange visitors, then
mhm.
this rule will have impact in their daily operation as well. So,
Very good.
yeah,
That's a good
back to
thing.
you.
But sometimes we already remember only those with visa category holders, right? And
Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned about those departments. So I'll talk about the major changes, but Lily, I'll talk about the first and two, and if you don't mind, talk about the third and fourth. Okay, so
Mhm.
here are the four biggest changes
Next
introduced.
slide.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
next slide, please. The introduced by the final rule. So first, instead of being admitted under the duration of status or DS, eligible F1 and J1 students and scholars will generally receive a fixed period of admission. Second, that initial admission will generally be up to 4 years at a time, even if an academic or research program is expected to last longer. So you can have 5 years of an academic program, but at a time, you will be given 4 years at a time. So Lily, why don't you talk about
Mhm.
the third and fourth, the additional time needed to complete the degree and some EOS applications that
Yeah,
require biometrics, that kind of thing. Go for it.
sure. So naturally, Rudy brought up a very good question. If you need to stay in US more than 4 years, then can you still do that? The answer is yes, but it's going to involve extra steps. So in general, if you are only admitted for the duration of your program, and that program is less than 4 years, then the one admission will cover that period. However, if you're a PhD student or some other exchange visitor need to be in US for 5 years, 6 years, then what's going to happen is in that duration, when you reach the maximum, you're going to choose either leave US to do a re-entry into US again, and then CBP going to give you an extended stay, or you will need to file extension of stay through USCIS, which means you don't leave US, but you file the paperwork with government, and USCIS, they will adjudicate your case. On either method, you're going to receive an updated I-94. On the I-94, you're going to have an admit until date specified. And that date is going to drive if you need to file extension for stay again, or if you need to do a re-entry again. Also, the government has been clear to file for extension of stay, they may require you to do biometrics. The biometrics cover taking a picture in a designated location or do fingerprints. But you're going to receive notification, and it is important you follow the instruction. Otherwise, it's going to delay the extension of stay petition. Back to you, Rudy.
Thank you, Lily. So again, I want to say that the final rule introduces a new immigration process. It's not a new visa category, right? So it's the shift is from duration of status to a fixed period of admission with additional time available through appropriate immigration process when needed. Let's go to the next slide. The extension of stay workflow. Lily, I'll give a very brief overview of this and then you can drive it from there, okay? So one of the biggest changes under the final rule, of course, is the introduction of a new extension of stay, or EOS. We talk about that during the glossary. So in the current system, if a student or a scholar needs more time, our office can often extend the Form I-20 or DS-2019 through CVIS. So under this new framework, there will be additional step. If you anticipate needing more time to complete your degree, to complete your research or exchange program, the first step is contact us early. And that the keyword is early here. If an extension is appropriate, and that's another important thing to say, we will review your eligibility and when appropriate, update your Form I-20 or DS-2019 to support your request. So Lily, why don't you take it from there and talk about the next step, which is to file an extension of stay with USCIS.
So as we previously talked about, to extend your stay in US in general, you're going to do it through travel, which means you leave and re-enter into US. But if you chose to stay in US, then you're going to file extension of stay in the paperwork format. How does this involve multiple steps? One, you first need to have the academic program or the appointment require you to have additional time to stay. So for instance, if you are given an I-20 already for 2 years for your master degree, you cannot just say, hey, I wanted to stay here for another year. You will need to have your academic program to justify to say, yes, the program itself required 2 years and a half, 2.5 years or 3 years to have a valid academic reason. In some situation, maybe students was getting sick and take a semester off, therefore result that to be extended. Those all need to be documented to show there is a valid academic reason to justify why the extension of stay is needed. When we have that solid foundation, then ISS going to recommend the new program end date in CVIS by updating either I-20 or DS-2019 and give you the new document. With the document, you're going to do the formal filing with USCIS. They're going to require filing fee. You're going to fill out a form called 539. And also you need to provide supporting documents. For instance, the letter from school to justify why instead of 2 years, it needs 2.5 years, or the doctor's notes to prove that you were sick for 1 semester. And if they require you to do biometrics, then you have to do those steps. All those become a USCIS filing package for your extension of stay. Once you send out to USCIS, then it could either get approved, which is wonderful, or it could deny. If that deny happened, then you will need to leave US right away. And later on, we're going to talk about that as well. Or you could receive what we call request for evidence. When you receive that, we always caution students and scholars, instead of respond right away, check in with your ISS assigned advisor, because we deal with government inquiry often and we have better knowledge what is the best way to address those RFEs. And if you filed extension of stay, but then your plan changed, initially you plan to stay in US, but somehow you have to leave. At this time, the travel itself may intervene with the filing that you already done. What we recommend you to do is to have a conversation with your ISS advisor prior to your travel so that you know what to anticipate. Because the regulation has specified in certain scenario, once you leave US, the extension of stay that you filed can be deemed as abandoned. And we want to make sure that abandoned will not cause your trouble when you return. So check with ISS before you travel. Back to you, Rudy.
So this is my words of advice here. If you think you'll need more time to complete your program, don't wait. Don't wait. Be proactive about this. Contact your ISSS advisor early so we can help you understand your options, like what Lily is talking about, and guide you through the process. This is not the time to wait, to procrastinate. This is the time to be very proactive. Okay, next slide, please, Mike. So Lily, whenever a regulation of this magnitude is introduced, the DS is one of the most significant regulation in a decade, as far as I'm concerned. One of the first questions people ask Lily is, what happened to me if I'm already here?
Yeah.
And fortunately, the final rule includes a transition provision to help guide that process, right? So
Mhm.
Lily, will you walk us through the provisions and then explain what they mean for our Penn community?
Yes, I will do that on the high level, but I will caution each individual student and scholar, instead of you trying to figure it out for yourself, if you're not in a very clean category, then have a conversation with your ISS assigned advisor. So in the high level way, the transition rule basically break down to be whether or not you are in US. So if you're already in US, a lot of the transition rule actually give you a little bit more leeway that you can remain in the current status in a longer period of time. If you already outside of US, then basically next time that you travel back to US, if it is after September 15th, then the new rule already kick in, unless Rudy mentioned if the congressional review result in major rule changes. Otherwise, after September 15, when you enter into US, then on the I-94, the duration of status will be gone. You're going to receive a new I-94 with admit until date, a specific day that you need to remember. You can stay in US until that day. But let's say you're already in US, then it also have a lot of different scenario. Some students maybe in US already started study for a year. Maybe some just arrived in US and just, a couple of days and a week. So the rule gave us a very specific window to say the transition period going to be applied, which will be a combination of different important dates. So how we calculate the day will be, it will be the combination of the program authorized the day plus the additional grace period. In combination, those cannot be more than 4 years. And what we listed over there is some general guidance that we want you to see, have a visual to say, if you are F1 student, although you may still in US, you have a duration of status on your I-94 because you never traveled. But the rule did set a limit. So the maximum period that you could be here in US is November 14th, 2030 for F1. And if you are J1, then it's October 15th, 2030. And we will explain to you, if you meet with us individually, how we calculate the dates. But what I want you to walk away is only the fact that you are in US with a duration of status doesn't mean you can hold on to duration of status forever. The rule itself imposed a fixed period on that already. It's the matter of how we calculate it. And the calculation can be complex. That's why we want you to talk to our ISS assigned advisor. Back to you, Rudy.
Very good idea. I think that's a very good suggestion. You really need to partner with your advisor, like Dr. Zhang said here. So next slide, please, Mike. So the next one is grace period. Lily, I'll take this on because I'm giving you a lot of a lot of questions later. So let's talk about the grace period, okay? The changes here. So under the current regulations, F1 students receive a 60-day grace period, okay, after completing their academic program or optional practical training. And so this provides time for individuals to prepare for departure, to begin a new academic program, or pursue another eligible immigration option. So under the final rule, that grace period is generally reduced from 60 days to 30 days. So what does this mean? This means that planning ahead, again, this is the theme of today, becomes even more important. If you're graduating, completing OPT, or transitioning to another immigration status, don't wait until the last minute. Our recommendation is simple, okay? Start planning early and work closely with ISS, with your advisor, well before your program or employment ends, okay? And that will give you the greatest flexibility and will help avoid unnecessary complications. This is a big thing. It's a very big, it's cut in half from 60 days to 30 days. So this makes early planning and timely advising more important than ever, okay? So let's
next
so
slide.
Lily, unless you want, I have a big 3 slides for you. Are you ready, or do you want to add more to the grace period?
The grace period is very clear. The other thing that I want to add is I know many students, they are typing away to ask questions, but we will encourage you to pay attention to the presentation itself, because that can help answer many of the questions that you're asking right now. And after you listen to the presentation, advisor will still be available. So I think to have the overall framework to understand how the rule works going to be very beneficial. Yeah, Rudy, I'm ready.
So Lily, this is 3 birds with 1 stone, okay? This is a big one. I'm trying to save time for us. So I would like you to discuss the practical implications for 3 key populations at Penn, okay? The impacts to those. Below graduate, I don't want to say undergraduate because I know you will explain that. Below graduate students, graduate and professional students, and English language programs. If you don't mind tackling those 3, because I believe we have all of them represented in this webinar. Go for it.
Yes, next slide, please. So if any of the students in the audience, you're here to study English language program, the rule have drastically changed how the training can be done. In the past, there is no limitation. You can continue enrolled in the program, you can log out of the program, pursue something else, and then take a break and come back and become a ELP student again. They kept all the ELP study period to be 24 months. And that itself is aggregate. So it does not reset. If you say I did ELP for 12 months and then I go home, can I come back with another 24 months? You will need to take into consideration you already used 12 months in the past. It includes the breaks and the multiple schools. So it is very rigid. Next slide, please. Now here you notice we used a term a little bit unusual. Instead of call undergrad student, we call the student below graduate level, because this is how this particular group was referenced in the regulation. So definitely, if you are here to study undergrad, you are in this category. Many times when the students, they apply to a university, maybe they have some idea about what they're going to study, but along the way, they may change their mind. Even at Penn, we have the general study non-declared major for all the college students. And then after a year or 2, you can declare your major. So in the past, there is no restriction in terms of when you can switch your major, but the rule imposed a time window for the after September 15th. So you have to be in your academic program for at least minimum 1 academic year before you can transfer out from Penn to another school or change within Penn from one major to the other, change your academic objective. Sometimes students switch from one school to the other. You have to wait at least 1 full academic year. After the completion, then if you're going to stay in the F1 program, you have to be escalated into a higher level. So if you say, I'm going to do a bachelor, and then I'm going to do another bachelor, until the rule gets further clarified, at least right now, it seems it's not permissible. Next slide, please. The next category is for graduate level students, which includes our master students, our PhD students, and also professional studies students. Like for instance, we have MD students, the DMD students from dental school. So for the graduate level students, that once you are admitted into the program, then you cannot change or transfer under the current education objective. So, which means, for instance, if you are admitted into Penn MBA program, and all of a sudden you want to switch to engineering data science program, in the past, as long as you get admitted by engineering, then it is permissible. But the new rule basically put a limit in that. The way that you obtain immigration document you entered into US is based on I-20 that we issued to you, either I-20 or DS 2019. The program objective has to be consistent with that particular program. If you're going to make changes to it, it does not allow you to go down. The only matriculation that can be considered, we talked about, is bachelor, later on going to the upper level. And for the master students, if you finish this particular program and then later on to exit and enter at a higher level, it is possible, but the other way is not possible. For instance, PhD downgrade to a master degree, or if you had a master degree and consider to do another master degree, which is a rule that we feel it is largely constrain international students' mobility. And we have voiced our concern with NAFSA, and I think many institutions don't agree with this rule. And we are hoping that in the later government agency guidance can provide more clarification. But as of right now, it is not permitted. Back to you, Rudy.
Yeah, thank you, Lily. They said that unless there's extenuating circumstances, they might make an exception. However, based on what we're hearing, those extenuating circumstances are natural disasters or school closure, which is very hard to meet, right? So I just want to say that because that is, I have to mention that as part of the new ruling. Okay, Lily, this one is a loaded question, but I want you to, if you don't mind, providing a very brief but very concise. I know this is a tall order. So for many of our students, one of the most important questions is what happens after graduation. Okay. So the good news is that the final rule does not eliminate these employment opportunities. Okay. That's very good news. However, it may change some of the immigration processes that support them. So can you walk us through the potential impacts on OPT, STEM OPT, and CAP gap?
Yeah.
Go for it.
Next slide, please. Yes. So many international students, you're here to study first, but a very important benefit is once you finish your degree, you can apply for OPT, which stands for Optional Practical Training. As Rudy said, the OPT as a benefit itself is not touched. So international students, you are still entitled to apply for OPT. However, they adjust a certain aspect of how you apply for OPT. So for instance, in the past, once you finish the program, you have 60 days grace period that you can decide you're going to stay in US, apply or depart. They shrink that window to be 30 days. Now, the other thing that is added to the application process is if you've been issued a fixed period on your I-94, then only just apply for OPT itself is not sufficient. You will need to do additional filing for what we already talked about, extension of stay, to make sure you are allowed to continuously stay in US and in conjunction with your EAD approval, then both of them will work together to give you the work permit. Now, that itself, it is going to be applicable for all the students who is already subject because they have a duration of status that is fixed. If the I-94 already not showing DS, but instead have a admit until day, then both filing is required. However, if you never leave US, you stayed in US all this time, even past September 15th, then you still have that duration of status on your I-94 record, at least for a long period of time, right, until your program ends. If you are in that scenario, then the government does provided a transition period that you could do that filing before March that you only need to file for 765 by itself. Again, this is a very nuanced new layer in terms of determining, do I need to file extension of stay or I just need to file 765? We don't want you to make that determination because if you made it wrong, it could result in the denial for your OPT. Therefore, you need to talk to your ISS assigned advisor to really make sure you are in the right category and do the filing in the right way. The other good news is they also have preserved, if you timely filed STEM OPT ahead of the OPT end date, then you're still allowable to work for 180 days, even though you're still waiting for the EAD approval from the government. Also, the cap gap, if students are changing from OPT to H-1B, and if your H-1B is selected, the cap gap provision still stays. That means you will still have a mechanism that bridge if you have a valid OPT or STEM OPT status before your H-1B kick in. Back to you, Rudy.
Thank you. That's very good, Lily. So now you have heard, we have discussed the final rule that may affect F1 students and post-completion employment. So let's now turn to our J1 community because we have people here in the audience from those constituents. So Penn is home, for some of you who don't know, to thousands of J1 students, visiting scholars, postdoctoral researchers, physicians, and of course their families. So while many of the same principles apply, we have to remember there are also important considerations that are unique to the exchange visitor program. So Lily, can you explain how the final rule may affect our J1 students, our scholars, and their dependents? And try to just wrap it up. Go for it. Yeah.
Sure. Next slide, please. So for the J1 exchange visitors, basically a lot of what we already talked about, it's slightly kind of lighter in terms of changes because, for instance, if you come as J1 student or J1 scholar, you already only have 30 days grace period. So the grace period change does not have major impact to you. However, the duration of status going away and you are going to only admit it through the DS 2019 program end date and no more than 4 years at the maximum, this is still a very major change. So if you are a research scholar, that you may have 5-year appointment, right? So if this happens to you, that means the one admission itself may not be able to cover the whole duration of your research program. You will need to either do a reentry or do a filing for extension of stay. The other thing that we want you to pay close attention to is the dependent that you have, their status is not standalone by itself. So anytime that you file extension for yourself, you have to concurrently file their extension as well. Otherwise, they will lose their status. In terms for our ISS office reporting, the general rule that all the scholars or students, if you are in J category, you have to report to us for address change, name change within 10 days. That hasn't changed. But our reporting window has shrinked from 21 days to 10 business days. So what we want you to take away from this conversation is, if you foresee that you need to stay here longer, you should have a conversation with your hosting department right away, because we will not be able to make any change to your DS 2019 just because you wanted to stay here longer. However, if you work for chemistry department and they, after evaluate, say, oh, you only have 2 years left and we can extend you for another 3 years to cover the whole research period you need to do, then you can submit the request. And because the rule become effective September 15th, we want you to do the filing prior to that. So between now and September 15th, if you foresee you need longer period of time, you should have that conversation now. This academic assessment apply to J1 research scholar students and F1 student as well. If you check on your I-20 DS 2019 and you think, oh, my I-20 only good for 1 year and I need to be here longer, you need to start the conversation with your academic department right away. And if you have that conversation and submit the request to us before September 15th, we change your I-20 or DS 2019 end date prior to September 15th. You don't need to file for extension of status with USCIS. The updated I-20 or DS 2019 can automatically extend your stay. But after September 15th, then the rule gets muddy, and we will need to evaluate if the filing is necessary.
Okay, Lily, if you don't mind, I'll ask you one more question and then I'll give you a rest, okay? So international travel, let's talk about travel considerations here. So international travel is an essential part, of course, of the Penn experience for many of our students and scholars. So whether you're returning home, you're conducting a research abroad, you're attending a conference, all of these are very normal situations here that we're dealing every day. Participating in a study abroad program, it's important to understand how this final rule may affect your travel and reentry. So Lily, after this, I'll give you a break.
Next slide.
Walk us through the key travel considerations and what you should know before making any international travel plans.
So the very important thing that you need to remember is from now until September 15th, you travel and come back, CBP should still give you duration of status, that annotation. But after September 15th, then you're going to be issued a fixed I-94 period. Also, we will have the new term, AUD, admit until date. And that date itself is very important because you can only stay in US up until that day. If you're going to stay longer, then you need to take action either to file for extension of stay or leave and do a reentry. So earlier we talked about travel itself might trigger USCIS, treat the extension of stay as abandonment. To avoid that, we want you to have the latest DS 2019, have valid visa, and have extension of status, extension of state receipt to be reviewed by your ISS advisor first, so that we can help you strategize to see what to expect. Otherwise, you may travel and then come back and find, oh, I need to do the filing again. So that's something that we want you to pay close attention. Yeah, next slide, please.
Thank you. So Lily, I'll take it from here and then I'll make you work on the lightning round, okay?
Sure.
So this is very dear. The next one is the unlawful presence. This is very dear to my heart because I'm very risk averse. I carefully weigh my risk, and this is one concept that I am watching since I was an international student 40 years ago. So another important concept, but for me is very important under the final rule, is unlawful presence, and why it's important to monitor your immigration documents carefully. So under the new framework, your I-94 admit until date, or AUD, becomes especially important, as I've said earlier. If you remain in the US beyond that date, without a timely filed extension of stay or another lawful basis to remain, you may begin accruing unlawful presence, okay? So if you've applied for an extension of stay, for example, it's important to understand that if USCIS denies the application, the requested extension will generally ends at that point. So if your employment or other authorized activity depended on that pending application, it must generally stop once the application is denied. Another key change is that there is generally no additional grace period simply because an EOS application was pending. That's why planning ahead and filing early will be so important under the new framework. So don't rely on a single date. I have an advice. There's so many days now that you have to watch for. Monitor both your Form I-20, your DS 2019, your I-94, and if you think you'll need additional time, contact your ISS advisor well before your authorized stay expire. So our goal here is to help you stay in compliance, avoid problems before they occur. And so we're here to help you, guide you through the process. So now we have moved, and then we'll go back to the nitty-gritty of immigration. But I want to talk about our institutional response. So Mike, do you mind talking, going to the next slide, please, here. Institutional response. So in terms of institutional impact for Penn, okay, so far we have focused on the final rule means for individual students and scholars. So let's look at Penn as an institution. This regulation affects much more than an immigration document, okay? It influences advising, technology, compliance, academic planning, research administration, all those, and even collaboration. So I'll mention four things here, or three. First, we expect an increase in advising. So we have to remember that ISS will be impacted. So students and scholars will naturally, you have more questions about your admission period, your travel, your extension of stay, your employment authorization, how to maintain your status. So we will continue expanding our support through webinars, FAQs. We have to be updating our website resources. We will be doing group advising, one-on-one appointments. So I was telling my team that our role is be an advisor. We will be crisis managers, critical thinkers, problem solvers. Number two is the I-94 will become more important than ever. So under the new framework, you have to monitor the I-94 expiration date. It's as important as monitoring the program end date on your I-20 or DS 2019. So if you have not been monitoring your I-20 or DS 2019 before, then you have to start monitoring not just one, but you have to monitor also the I-94, not just the I-20 or DS 2019. So we will try to develop processes and tools so that we can help you stay informed so that you don't avoid missing important deadlines. And then we are preparing our systems and operations. Lily, as working with Amanda and Katie, our IT group, we are reviewing our technology. We are looking, exploring our workflows, analyzing them, our communication process. We just finished our strategic mini ISS strategic mini strategic retreat the other day, so that we can ensure we're ready to support the Penn community before the rule takes effect. So it's either communication or onboarding or operation. And finally, collaboration will be essential. You know, in order for us to implement this rule, it will require close coordination among ISS. And if you're part of a school here, we will partner with you. If you're an administrator, a business administrator, we need your partnership. If you're HR, if you're a faculty listening now, if you're a department administrator, and of course, we are also partnering with our Penn Immigration Working Group. So immigration compliance, I want to emphasize, is truly a shared institutional responsibility. So we have been working with university leadership in the past few months, with campus partners, developing guidance, FAQs. We've been working hard behind the scenes. And so we are, we want to make sure that Penn is well prepared. So that's what I want to share with you. So let's talk about in the next coming weeks, our response so far, Mike. Our approach has been, I will describe it as simple, right? Provide timely, accurate, practical guidance while reducing uncertainty as much as possible. That has been the slogan of ISSS. Since the final rule was published, we have taken several important steps. We have, of course, I hope you have visited it, a dedicated curation of status webpage, which will serve as our central source for updates, FAQs, travel guidance, webinar recordings, other resources. So as federal guidance evolves, we will be continuing to update those information. And if you have not visited them, please visit them because that's for you. We are also, doing we want to communicate proactively, right? We reach out to all of you and we will continue providing timely updates as new information becomes available. I'm sad they're still evolving. And today's webinar is just the beginning. We will continue offering webinars, information sessions. And this is what we will be doing in the next weeks. We will do targeted outreach for different audiences so that everyone receives information that is guidance that are tailored to your specific needs. And so finally, we want to make sure that we will work closely with you. And we will reach out to you so that we can have a university-wide response. So we are not waiting until September 15 to prepare. We are preparing now so that when the rule takes effect, our students, scholars, and faculty will be ready. So what can you do now? Just want to make sure you have a responsibility too, okay?
Next slide.
So next slide, please. So although no immediate action is required, now is the time, and I want to emphasize this clearly, to begin preparing for the new framework, okay? For our students and scholars, if you're listening, the most important advice is simple. Be proactive, not reactive. Under the current system, many of you have focused primarily on the end date of your I-20 or DS 2019. But now that under the new rule, it will be equally important to monitor your 94 because that will determine your authorized period of admission. So if your academic plans, employment, research plans, travel plans change, don't wait until the last minute. Please reach out to us so we can help you understand your options. And for our schools, departments, BAs, and HR listening, your partnership is very important for us. If you anticipate a program extension, a renewed research appointment, or any change that could affect immigration status of your scholars, engage with us as early as possible. Early planning will help us provide the best guidance and support. And lastly, I want you to remember three important dates: your passport expiration date, your Form I-20, the S-29 program end date, and I have to add now your I-94 expiration date once the new rule takes effect, September 15. Okay? These are very important because these dates serve different purposes, and understanding each date will become increasingly important under the new framework. So I just want to share with you that. So
Slide. Yeah.
next slide, Mike, please. Thank you. So I want to just mention four key messages, and I'll do it quickly. First, the final rule replaces duration of status, or DS, with a fixed admission period that will generally be reflected in your I-94. So your I-94 will become one of the most important immigration documents. Second, if you need additional time to complete your degree, your research, an extension of stay or EOS may be the best option for the process, in addition to ISSS recommendation of support or travel. And third, early planning is more important than ever. So we will want to work with you if you're thinking of traveling, OPT, STEM, transferring schools. We have to encourage you to work with ISS before important deadlines arrive. And finally, I've said this earlier, implementation is still evolving. We expect additional guidance from the federal government before the rule takes effect. And as that guidance becomes available, we will continue to provide you with timely updates, with practical resources and individualized advising so that you can navigate these changes with confidence. So I think
Yeah, Rudy, then we transition into the question Q&A.
the questions.
Yes.
So Lily, if you don't mind, we will do this lightning round, okay? Because I want to end with what, in terms of what our commitment is, okay? So next slide, please. So Lily, if you do this quickly, and if you say, can we move to the next? It's like a game show here. First question, does the new rule apply to current students or only new incoming students?
The rule apply to both.
Yes.
And also, I wanted to make a comment for the advisor who is on call right now trying to answer the question. We're going to pause because we want you to listen to the Q&A that Rudy and I were doing right now so that you can get the most accurate answer. So continue, Rudy.
If I stay in the United States, Lily, and do not travel, can I keep duration of status?
You keep the duration of status on the I-94, which going to make you have additional transition benefit. However, that doesn't mean you can stay in US forever. So check with your ISS assigned advisor. The other thing that I want to mention is when you say you stay in US, because many students does not count I travel to Canada to be travel. Anytime that you leave US, go to Canada, go to the cruise, go to adjacent island, that will reset your I-94, and that may take the duration of status away.
So can we go to the next slide, Lily? I'm trying to cover all the slides.
Next slide.
Slide, Mike. Let's choose a question here. Oh, this is a very practical question. Does the 4-year limit include time spent on OPT or STEM OPT?
I think the question itself, it is a little bit mixed. So in terms of when you are here already, the 4-year period itself, if the rule itself will not look back to see how long you have stayed here. For students already on OPT and STEM OPT, you basically are looking forward to see after September 15th, how long you're going to stay here and if that's going to trigger. So the 4-year limitation itself, it's going to be taken care of by either you're going to file for extension of stay or you already on OPT or STEM OPT.
Lily, the next question. I know a lot. I heard a lot of this questions. What happens if an EAD or the I-765 is approved, but an extension of stay is still pending?
That will not be possible for the next 6 months to a year because the government did give you the transition period that when you are already in US, when you file for the OPT, you don't necessarily have to file extension of stay. However, in the future, if it did happen to say you filed 2 petitions that you have extension of stay to match how long you can stay in US, and at the same time, you have the EAD filing because of the OPT. The details of this is still to be clarified by the government, but using the current governance rule, what we can say is if you receive the EAD card, it's likely that you're going to be able to start employment. However, you have to have the extension of stay either approved or at least have a receipt to show you have timely filed your EAD to keep the EAD alive.
I agree with that, Lily. We share the same response to that. Okay, let's go to the next slide, Mike. Okay, let's see. This one. We have been talking about this, Lily. Will reentry change my I-94 from DS to a fixed admit until date?
Depending on when you travel. So if you travel between now and come back before September 15th, you should still get duration of status. But if you travel after September 15th, then you will have a fixed admit until date on your I-94 record.
Okay, next slide, please, Mike. Is there another one? Okay. I will not ask the last 3 because that's How about the what happens to a PhD student already entering 4th, 5th, 6th, or later years?
So for students already in US, again, I want to reiterate the point that I already said before. If you foresee that this is your 5th year, but you may need to have another year to finish your study, have that conversation with your academic department now. Because between now until September 15th, if you submit the program extension to ISSS and we extend your I-20 to give you a longer period of time, regardless if it's 5 years or 6 years, as long as your I-20 is valid before September 15th and you did not leave US, then you don't need to file for extension of stay. Therefore, it is a short window that may provide benefit if the student's already in US and foresee you need to be here for a longer period of time.
Okay, so Lily, I will cut our conversation here. And what I can promise to the group is that we will respond to all of these posted questions and we will post this in our FAQ. Okay. So Mike, let's end with my commitment, our commitment to you. Okay, let's go though. Yeah. So today we've talked about regulations, we talk about timelines, we talk about immigration procedures and compliance requirements. But at the heart of everything we do at ISS is people, okay? Every international student, scholar, postdoctoral researcher, faculty member, even a family member, contribute to what makes Penn such an extraordinary institution. So I always say this every time I welcome students and scholars. You enrich your classrooms, you advance groundbreaking research, you bring new ideas, cultures, languages, and perspectives that strengthen our entire university. And please know that you are valued here. And as immigration policies change, our commitment as ISS and Penn Global and Penn to you does not. We understand that uncertainty can sometimes feel overwhelming, but you do not have to navigate these changes by yourself, okay? So whether you have a simple question or a complex situation, ISS, your advisor, is here to listen, to guide, to support you. That has always been our mission, and it will continue to be our mission moving forward. And on behalf of Dr. Lily Zia, our Inter-ISS team, and Penn Global, thank you for joining us today. Thank you for your trust. Thank you for your partnership. And thank you for being such an important part of the Penn community. We look forward to continuing to support you every step of the way. Watch for announcements for the next webinar. Watch for the recording and share it with your friends. Stay in touch. Thank you. Bye-bye.